back to another episode of Warframe Master Guides. Now, we're taking a part 2 look at BARUUK because I don't think I went into enough detail with the first video. I'm going to teach you guys play styles and things like that. I went into a lot of detail in the first video about how to use his abilities, what they do. I gave a brief summary, but I think I can do a little better. So I'm going to try to do better the second time and show you just how powerful BARUUK really is. Now that we have some full-on energy, I can actually show you how this works. So they're going to shoot at me, and I'm going to activate my first ability. So like I said in the first video, you want to keep this on as much as possible for this exact reason. They're going to attack me, and they cannot do any damage. Now this, of course, I can look wherever I want, but if I were to turn my back on them, then they would start actually doing damage to me, which I don't want. So if I turn back around, it will make the meter go down fairly quickly because there's a lot of them. So now that my meter is full, or empty, or however you want to put it, I can now pop my fourth ability and then mow them down. And as you can see, if you add a lot of impact and crit mods to this, it will just do an absolute assload of damage. This is definitely one of the better combos that you would want to use, because if you constantly have your first ability active, then you can just start shredding, because as you're taking damage, you're not losing as much of the meter as you normally would. And of course, you can do, some combos, like you can slide, hit the melee attack button again, and you do like this aura spin attack. And if you hit an enemy directly with it, they will be flung up into the air like so. That enemy just didn't survive, but if he would have survived, he just would have been floating there. And of course, there you go. So that's your fourth ability. That's why it is so good to synergize with the first ability, because and of course you can just cancel it because they're both toggle abilities, and you cannot take any damage. However, if you're up in the air, there used to be this glitch where it didn't deploy, but now you are freely able to jump around. But with both this ability, if I turn my back to it, you'll notice the range is significantly shorter. That's because both his first ability and his fourth ability are based on the way that the Warframe is facing and not the camera. That's why I tried to stress in the first video, do not turn your back on the enemy if you're using your first ability, because you will not receive any charge for your meter, and you will not be able to have the damage reduction as well, because you're going to take damage if you turn your back to the enemy. I don't know why it's like that. It is a little weird how you can only be attacked from the front, but the fact that they gave him this aura attack like this, it's extremely useful. So you can kind of use that to save you if you really needed to. Now, let's turn these abilities off. I'm going to go ahead and grab some more energy. I'm going to be using a lot of energy pads during the duration of this video, so please keep that in mind. Okay, so now, as you can see, I have my little daggers that is orbiting around me. Now, what these things will do is they will actually seek out enemies, and not only will they do damage, but they will take away their guns. So as you can see, it does a little bit of damage, and it will take away their guns. So if they do survive the initial attack from the dagger, it will disarm them. So this is more of a disarming method than anything. So what you can do is you can use lull to put the enemies to sleep, and then once they fall asleep, you can stealth kill them. But the problem with the stealth kill is you do not get a stealth affinity bonus like such. See, no affinity bonus. That kind of sucks, but it does allow you to use covert lethality on a dagger and one-shot them regardless of their health, armor, or shield. So I would definitely try to bring a dagger with you whenever you use this Warframe. So now we can just put all of these guys to sleep.
Extraction is ready. Life support
Here
activated.
we go. That did not hit him. Here we go. Yeah. So the sleep, it kind of has a gradual effect to it. You can recast it to make it go a little quicker, but then once they're all asleep, you can just mow them down. So that is probably your best combination, is to keep your first ability active and use your other three abilities, your first three abilities. Here we go. And then you're able to just keep this up as much as possible. So you can just spam this, this, and then this. That is like your bread and butter combination. So obviously you keep your first ability on as much as possible, and then that will help you gain charge to channel your fourth ability. So try to keep that on as much as possible. Lull, only really use your second ability if it's to put a group of enemies to sleep and then mow them down with your fourth ability. And you do have to aim it, so it does take some getting used to, because obviously if you get shot in the back, you don't receive the thing. So you constantly have to be turning the Warframe to make it face the enemies as you fight, which can take some time to get used to, but if you can master it, it will definitely help you in the long run with BARUUK. Now, this ability, you want to have it active all the time, so you want to have your daggers constantly out, because not only does it do damage, it will take away their weapons. Then once they're disarmed, they have no choice but to chase after you, because they're a melee unit. Then you can just put them to sleep, and then destroy them with your fourth ability. Now with other Warframes, this does help a tremendous amount, for the simple fact that you can use this in combination with other Warframes. So, possible combinations that I would be looking to use with, like, your friends. If you have any friends that play this game, I highly recommend trying to use team comps, because team comps are very useful in this game. They are going to help you out tremendously, because every Warframe has their weak spots. Every Warframe has a thing they're not good at. So, in order to counteract this, what you'd really want to do is try to use BARUUK's abilities, or any Warframe you might be using. Use their abilities in tangent with another one's abilities. For example, with BARUUK, I would probably pair him up with Valkyr, because Valkyr can not only give him more armor, because he is kind of a squishy frame, you can also use her war cry to make your attack speed go up a hell of a lot higher, so you'll be absolutely shredding through these people at lightning speeds because of the attack speed bonus that you're going to be getting. Now, another one you could possibly get is Rhino, because Rhino's roar buff is also extremely good with BARUUK, because it increases your damage. So if you already have modded these little punching weapons right here, you can mod these separately. So if you mod them separately, you can go for crit and impact, and it will buff the damage pretty significantly if you use roar. And another one you could probably go with is more of like a buffer frame. So you could probably go with Oberon to give you more armor. And if your Oberon player happens to have the mod augment, what you could do is, for Smite, that is, his first ability, he'll be able to put Radiation on you, so he'll be able to cast his first ability onto BARUUK, and then buff the damage even further, because it will put a Radiation proc on you, which means you will your attacks as BARUUK will
We
be
all
able to
share in this
deal
bounty.
radiation
Hold out as
damage.
long as you can.
And that's really going to help you in the long run. So there's 3 Warframes that I would personally bring with you if you're going to play BARUUK in a party. But you don't really need to, because as long as you're spamming your 4th and 1st ability, you can pretty much use them indefinitely. Like, you don't really need to worry about the charge meter going down if you constantly have the 1st ability active, because you're going to be you're not going to run out of the charge meter as quickly as you would if you turn it off. That's why you can see me trying to keep it up as much as possible. However, energy is definitely not his strong suit. You're definitely going to need a lot of energy to sustain yourself, which is why I put energy Siphon on, because on my energy Siphon I have Cunning Drift, which really helps with the regeneration factor of my energy pool. Because obviously you're channeling 2 toggle abilities at the same time. See, if I just leave on the 1st ability, you can notice my energy is actually going back up. And then if you turn it off completely, it goes up even faster. So you can't really run out of energy completely as long as you turn off these abilities. And you can still use this one, and it won't hurt you too bad. And you can still use your 2nd ability as well, and it still won't hurt you too bad. But if you turn on those toggle abilities both at the same time, you will start rapidly losing energy pretty quickly. But that's really your only threat, is energy consumption. You will have to watch your energy consumption quite frequently, just because if you run out of energy with BARUUK, you're kind of screwed, and that's his real only weakness. Because, I mean, you really can't die. Because if you have your 1st ability active, you cannot die. It is almost impossible as long as you know how to pay attention. And, you know, it's almost as good as Iron Skin. The only problem with Iron Skin is, like, I mean, there's no real issue with it, but the reason why it's better is just because it's all over his body. But as long as you're not facing away from the enemies, as long as you know how to keep yourself, or keep all your enemies in front of you, you don't really need to worry about it. So, like, you can just aim down sights like this and just back up, and they're still hitting me, and they're cutting down my meter.
You're running out of time.
So,
Consider extraction.
which is what you want. You want your little silver ring to go down so you can use your 4th ability,
Life support
which I'm
has
going to
been
do again. And it can hit multiple targets as well, which is extremely useful. And I mean, you really want to use your 3rd ability quite often. Like, you want to constantly have these daggers up, because you want to turn your enemies into melee units, because they group up more and they're just easier to cut down with your 4th ability. And another thing you can do is, whenever they group up like that, you're able to use your 2nd ability to put them all to sleep, which is really good for crowd control, because if you start getting overrun, and, like, I would try to wait to use your 2nd ability until you really need it, because if you start getting overrun, you don't really want to, because he's already kind of an energy frame. Like, we all know he's an energy frame. He eats energy up. Like, BARUUK will just chew through your entire energy pool, no matter how much you might have. So, not spamming your 2nd ability is really something you want to try to focus on, because you really want to conserve your energy as much as possible. Lull is basically a perfect oh shit button. Like, there's tons of enemies, let me go ahead and put them all to sleep, and then punch them all to death with my 4th ability. And if you mod your, which I will show off my builds and stuff like that at the end of the video, like I always do. But if you mod your special weapons like this correctly, and if you make sure to put on the right mods like impact and crits and even some elemental damage, you should be able to reduce the effect that it might have. So you really don't want to... You don't want to run out of energy, is what I'm trying to say. You don't really want to run out of energy with BARUUK, so try not to spam LOL. LOL is there for like, oh shit, okay, I need to put these enemies to sleep, and then you pop this ability, and then you pop your fourth ability, and then you just cut them down. But that's not really going to help you all that much if you do not have good melee weapons. So if it's not that strong, then you're going to need to try to find the correct mod combination for it, which I will show you the build that I'm currently running with, but not everybody wants to run a build like this. However, I would highly suggest it. Not everybody likes crit builds, I get that, but with this one it's almost necessary, because impact and crits go really good together, as you can probably see from the stats that I'm throwing out here. Like, look at some of these numbers. And of course, you can even throw in, like if you have a Kavat that has, I think it's called Cat's Eye or something like that, then you're able to get even more crits out of it. So not only are you pretty much completely unkillable if you do it correctly, and actually learn how to keep all the enemies in front of you, which isn't hard, because if you turn them all into melee units, they'll group up naturally. So all you really would need to do is use your third ability with the daggers, take away all their guns, then let them shoot at you for a little bit, put them all to sleep, and then mow them down. And there's not really much they can do about it. And of course, you could just slide into them and take them out that way. Although the range on this one is kind of locked at point blank range, pretty much. So unless you're like balls deep in them, it's not really going to do much. However, I would definitely suggest getting BARUUK if you don't have him already. He's a very good frame, he's extremely powerful, and he's just, I don't know why so many people overlooked him when he first came out. He's a really solid frame. All of the necessities are here. You have crowd control, you have DPS, you have stun. I mean, for God's sakes, everybody loves Warframes that can put enemies to sleep, because I mean, look, it's helping me with my challenges. Like, I just completed a Nightwave mission for it, so... And of course, even if you run out of energy, and the only ability you're allowed to use is this, LOL, then... shit, go for it, bud. Because then, you can just use your melee weapon and cut them down. And if you have Covert Lethality on a dagger, you can absolutely destroy level 10,000 units if... I mean, obviously that's kind of a stretch, but you know what I mean. Anyway, let's get on to the build. I think that's the thing everybody would like to see. So I'll be back in a second. Alright, so this is the build that I am currently running, and it has been amazing. Like, I absolutely love this build. I put this together myself. There could be a few tweaks and bonuses that I could throw in here. However, let me kind of break down the build for you and explain. So, like I mentioned earlier, I put Energy Siphon and Cunning Drift, which really help for regaining your energy, especially if you're in solo missions, and this is definitely a necessity. Now, if you're one of those people that only play in party missions and you don't really go solo, you only play with a squad, you can probably use Corrosive Projection, which would definitely help you, especially if you're a lower level player and don't really know how to play BARUUK all that well and are still learning. So this is definitely also a very viable option. However, I would still keep Cunning Drift no matter which one you go with, just because it'll buff the effect, because it's super good for getting your energy back. And since he chews through so many points of energy, you're definitely going to need it. Now, I also threw on stretch. You don't really need a whole lot of range.
Operator, did you hear that? It said cosmic background radiation is a riot.
Fuck you, Ordis. Now, what you could do is you could also put on. Let's see. Where is it? Cunning Drift. I could actually put this on at some point because it is really good for like I said, you don't need a whole lot of range, but I personally am good with this. So if all you have is this, then you're good pretty much. But this will also help you a lot as well, and not for the range. The range is good because it does give you bonus range, but I don't overdo it on the range because it's just not necessary. You don't really need it. This is all the range you really need, but the reason you would want Cunning Drift is for the plus slide. So, like I said before, with BARUUK, you can do this slide attack. So if you slide, then hit your melee up button while your fourth ability is active, you do that aura attack. Now remember, it is locked at a certain range. So no matter how much range you put, the aura attack is locked at a base range. It doesn't get any bigger than what you saw in this video. So instead, if you put on Cunning Drift, you can instead use it to slide further in order to pop off more of those aura effects. It just helps you a lot more if you're spamming that attack, which I do quite often. But I also, what you really want to do is I put on Redirection and Vitality. You do not have to do this because if you focus on a lot of DPS and a lot of power strength, it's not really necessary. I just threw it on because he is pretty squishy and I was having a lot of trouble staying alive. So if you have these two mods, I did put two formas in him just to add these two, but this is not a necessity. You can just put a Vitality if you want, but I would definitely put at least one of these mods, if not both, like I did. Now, obviously, Blind Rage, not everybody has. So, Intensify and Power Drift should be plenty enough, but if you do have access for a Blind Rage, go for it. Now, efficiency, I know this looks bad, but don't worry about it because it's really not that serious. This is not really going to help you. It's not really going to hurt you, help you, listen to me, all that much because you have this little setup right here. And of course, I put Prime Flow, so if you have one of these, throw these on as well because this is really going to help you not run out of energy. So you have a lot of things going for you when it comes to energy consumption. Of course, there's picking up energy orbs from killing enemies and things like that. So you really want as much power strength and power range as possible. You do not need duration at all. I've heard so many people say that duration is like a must-have. It's really not. I didn't add any duration because it stops you from spamming your second ability. So you want your second ability to wear off as quickly as possible. Just so that way, like I know the enemies will stay asleep longer, but if you go for the power strength and power range and you're able to hit them from a lot further of a distance, you don't need the extra duration because you'll kill them quicker. Now that you've seen this build, and now that you kind of know what you need to mod for, and that's range and strength, and maybe a little bit of duration if you want, but do not overdo it. You can possibly put on an auger message. This isn't that bad. Slap one of these on, but I wouldn't go any higher than this. Now let's get on to the weapon. So this is the build that I went with. It does do a pretty significant amount of damage. I put on True Steel. I put on Organ Shatter. These are really the only two crit mods that you need. I did put on Gladiator's Might just for a little extra, just because I had extra room, so I threw that on. But this is not really necessary. You really only need these two. You could put another elemental mod here if you wanted to. You'd have to change the polarity, obviously. I mean, you could even put a Fury here and it would work pretty good. So you don't even really need an extra crit mod. I just threw it on because I felt like it. But I really wouldn't suggest it if you have something that will do more raw damage. And of course, I went with a few. I went with an elemental. So I went with frost. But if you're are cold, so you can put whatever you want here. It really doesn't matter. You can put fire, you can put cold, you can put toxin, electricity, whatever you want. I just chose cold because it slows them down if the enemies survive my initial attack. So I would heavily suggest putting a cold proc like this. So obviously, not only does it do a shitload of cold damage, but I put on the status chance as well, because this has a lot of status chance, and you really want this to proc, because if the status effect, the cold status effect, more specifically, actually procs the enemy, it will slow them down and gives you more time to lull them to sleep and then punch them to death with this ability. So obviously I put heavy trauma because it's an impact weapon. It does a lot of damage. You want them to be able to get knocked back whenever you hit them. And pressure point, must have. Okay, this is pretty obvious. It does severely take down your attack speed. That's why I said, actually, you know what? I'm going to put a Fury on it. Like, I'm just going to put Fury on it because this isn't necessary. So I just threw it on because I wanted to. But this is all the crit that you really need. This will help you output your DPS a pretty significant amount. So if you're going to use this mod here, definitely put on a Fury. So would I suggest BARUUK? Yes, absolutely. BARUUK is an amazing Warframe. He's extremely versatile, and you can bring him into Steel Path. Like, I've brought BARUUK into Steel Path a few times. He performs amazing, and he scales extremely well. As long as you use the combinations that I have taught you in this master guide, you should be able to take on the Steel Path pretty easily with BARUUK. So if you guys have enjoyed, like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below which Warframe you want to see me do a review on next. So I will catch you guys in the next video.